My girlfriend Emma has an influencer friend. This friend Sarah brands herself as a modern independent woman and keeps trying to brainwash Emma with ideas like, men can't be trusted. Women can only find happiness by staying single and independent. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, so I created a fake account on TikTok with the persona of a wealthy bachelor. That influencer friend promptly DM'd me. "Hey handsome, wanna meet up?" Emma and I had been dating for over 2 years and our relationship had been fairly stable. Like any girlfriend, she had her occasional mood swings, which I considered normal. However, lately, I noticed Emma's attitude toward me had become erratic, sometimes hot, sometimes cold. And there were times she barely acknowledged me at all. Her behavior was making me increasingly frustrated, which in turn made me less patient with her. During these moments, Emma would break down in tears, accusing me of not loving her anymore, and surely having someone else in mind, threatening to end our relationship completely. "Sarah was right about you. You're just not trustworthy," Emma cried during one of our recent arguments over something trivial. This Sarah she mentioned is one of her casual friends, a TikTok live streamer with a modest following, though not particularly successful. To call them best friends would be an exaggeration. They weren't even following each other on TikTok. Despite their casual relationship, Sarah had managed to wedge herself between Emma and me with her silver tongue, constantly urging Emma to break up with me, saying she was too young and should find someone better before the new year. It all started that Friday night. After dinner that Friday, Emma and I returned to our rented apartment. When I came out of the shower, I found her lying in bed, happily chatting with others in a live stream. Out of curiosity, I grabbed my phone and joined the stream too. It was a casual gathering of viewers from all over, and everyone was having a good time. Then the live stream notification announced a new user joining. It was Sarah. Her profile picture showed a long-haired figure from behind, and I had to admit, her slim figure gave off an ethereal vibe. When she spoke, her voice was deliberately sweet and affected, making me shiver involuntarily. Intrigued, I clicked the follow button. The next morning, I sent Sarah a good morning message. She read it immediately, clearly quite active early in the day. I followed up with another message. "With such a sweet voice, you must be quite beautiful." Sarah quickly replied, "Check out my profile if you're curious." Eagerly, I clicked through to her page, expecting that if she wasn't conventionally beautiful, she'd at least be cute given her voice. But the woman in the videos couldn't have been further from what I'd imagined. Not only was she far from attractive, she could be described as rather bizarre looking. What's more, every video caption was filled with toxic positivity about how women should stay single and independent. She constantly preached that only single life could bring happiness, and those in relationships should break up immediately. Her content and style left me speechless. Sarah appeared to be in her late 30s, and it seemed like she was just bitter about her own inability to find a partner, envious of others who could date, marry, and have children. Just as I was about to exit, Sarah sent another message. "Help me attract some guys to my tonight's stream. I love being surrounded by male attention." This was ridiculous. She was simultaneously bashing men while craving their attention. Wasn't this completely contradictory? While I'm no saint, I at least have normal values. Seeing such an absurd request, I simply read the message and ignored it. If I had known she looked so abstract, like a Picasso painting, I wouldn't have been curious enough to follow and message her. Thinking about this made me regret my actions deeply, but once I got busy with work, I pushed the whole thing to the back of my mind. Until that evening when I got home, Emma's behavior was unusually cold. She didn't even come to greet me as she normally would, let alone speak to me. "Emma, what's wrong? Are you upset about something?" I asked, puzzled. My question only seemed to agitate her more. She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of the morning's messages with Sarah. "Jack, look at what you've been up to," she said coldly. At first glance, I recognized my conversation with that pretentious woman. "Listen, Emma, let me explain. I was just curious and asked a casual question. Didn't you see I stopped responding after that?" I tried to explain frantically, but Emma wouldn't hear it. She threw her phone at me and ran into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I couldn't believe Sarah would send these screenshots to my girlfriend. What was her agenda? Emma gave me the cold shoulder for several days over this. I had to spend days trying to make it up to her, eventually winning her over with a designer bag she'd been eyeing. Emma isn't the type to hold grudges, and I thought the issue was finally behind us. But a month later, when I logged into Emma's WeChat to look for something, a message popped up from Sarah. What I saw made my blood boil. Your boyfriend has questionable values and is clearly a womanizer. How can you still be with someone like him? Didn't you see how he flirted with me right in front of you? If he hadn't been scared off, who knows what else he might have said in private. If he were my boyfriend, I would have dumped him already. But that's just me. The more I read, the higher my blood pressure rose. The incident was long past, and Emma had moved on, yet this woman was still trying to poison our relationship with her manipulative words. Looking through their chat history, I could see they'd been talking on and off for about 3 days. After a period of no contact, Sarah had randomly started pushing her toxic agenda again, trying to convince Emma to break up with me. The chat logs were full of Sarah's poisonous advice. She even shared accounts of supposedly independent single women who promoted anti-marriage, child-free lifestyles, attempting to brainwash Emma with these ideas. What was even more infuriating was seeing how Emma's attitude shifted throughout their conversation. She started by defending me. Emma, actually, I've been with Jack for a long time, and while he can be unreliable sometimes, he's fundamentally a good person. Sarah, men are masters of deception. They might seem devoted before marriage, but afterward, they'll expect you to work, do all the housework and take care of kids, all while they contribute nothing except going out drinking and fooling around. Just look around. How many married women are truly happy? Emma, I guess you have a point. Seeing Sarah's manipulation working on Emma made my blood boil. Her influence was becoming dangerous. Who knew what other drama she might stir up in the future, even if we got married? After reading through all their messages, I felt sick to my stomach. This woman clearly had the mentality that if she couldn't find happiness, she didn't want others to be happy either. How twisted must someone be to think this way? Having been with Emma for so long, our relationship had found its rhythm, and I was seriously considering marriage. But now, seeing how Sarah had influenced Emma's thinking, I knew I couldn't just sit back and watch. Something had to be done. I needed to convince Emma to distance herself from this toxic friend who seemed determined to create chaos in others' lives. One evening, I noticed Emma watching a live stream and casually asked, "Are you still in touch with that streamer friend of yours?" Emma's fingers paused momentarily, a subtle reaction I didn't miss. She shook her head slightly and said, "Not really. We weren't that close to begin with, so there's no need to stay in touch." Lying. I inwardly scoffed. This woman had been constantly trying to convince my girlfriend to break up with me, and now Emma was even lying to me about their contact. "Oh? Have you been talking to her?" Emma shot back defensively, glaring at me. "Of course not. Why would I? She's not even a fraction as beautiful as you, and she's much older. You should stay away from people like that. They're full of toxic positivity and meaningless advice." I quickly defended myself. Before Emma could respond, I silenced her with a kiss. The next day, I created a new TikTok account. I set the profile picture as a luxury car and the background as a grand mansion, posting several videos flaunting wealth to create the persona of a wealthy bachelor. My plan was to interact with Sarah and see if she'd take the bait. I deliberately joined her live stream. As soon as I entered, I saw her usual act, that affected voice calling everyone sweetie and darling, making my skin crawl. The stream didn't have many viewers, so when I sent a few expensive virtual gifts, Sarah was overjoyed. Her voice became even more affected, almost sickeningly sweet. "Your voice is mesmerizing. It makes my heart melt," I commented. "I'm following you now. I'll be back next time." Sarah couldn't stop expressing her gratitude. I quickly left the stream, but not before leaving a like and follow. She immediately followed back and sent several appreciative messages. "Thank you for the follow, sweetie. Love you. Come back soon, darling. I love having sweet followers like you. Thanks for the gifts. You're so generous." I couldn't help but smirk at her messages. Sarah quickly got more forward in our chat. She kept insisting I must be a special, independent-minded man, unlike other guys. I played along, complimenting her supposed life philosophies I saw on her profile. Her messages became increasingly enthusiastic. She went on and on about her lifestyle views, bragging about her independence, and claiming she'd never consider marriage unless she found someone truly on her level. Then, Sarah unexpectedly started sending me screenshots of what appeared to be her income statements. Looking at them, I could tell they were obviously edited or fake. The image quality was poor, and some dates still had visible traces of pixelation from previous edits. I had no idea you were not only beautiful but also so capable. What kind of man would be worthy of you? I laid the flattery on thick. Sarah sent a smug emoji before replying, "As a modern independent woman, I don't care much for trivial romance. Men who can match me are rare indeed." I nearly gagged. The audacity of these words coming from her was astounding. The more Sarah showed off, the more nauseated I felt. Our conversation was making me so sick that I could barely keep my dinner down. Some people really need a reality check. Sarah was clearly suffering from delusions of grandeur. I'd initially planned to expose her lies directly, but then I thought, why waste all the effort I put into creating this fake profile? Plus, this woman had repeatedly tried to break up my relationship. Just thinking about it made my blood pressure rise. Sarah kept piling on to her fictional persona, claiming she spent her non-streaming time exercising, reading, drinking tea, and engaging in various refined activities. When I suggested exchanging WeChat contacts to become friends, she agreed immediately and sent her number. I added her using my alternate WeChat account and checked her moments. The first post showed her feeding stray cats, crouching under a streetlight where only her silhouette was visible. I wasn't sure if this was another fabricated persona or genuine kindness. At this point, I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Nevertheless, I liked the post to show I'd seen it. Sarah quickly messaged me, "I often do charity work too, as you can see from my moments. If you're free this weekend, we could visit an orphanage together and play with the kids." Her forward invitation surprised me. I hadn't expected her to take the bait so quickly. A few livestream gifts, and she was already making moves. But of course, I couldn't actually meet her. That would blow my cover immediately. If Emma found out, our relationship would be over for sure. Then I thought of my colleague Mike. He had divorced his wife just 2 months ago, coincidentally because his wife had listened to toxic advice from her coworker, constantly arguing about divorce until their marriage finally ended. Like me, Mike had tried to be patient at first, but eventually he couldn't take it anymore. We were in similar situations, except I still had a chance to save my relationship. The next day at work, I explained everything to Mike. At first, he was hesitant. "Are you sure this will work? What if we get caught?" "Don't worry," I reassured him. "Her whole persona is fake anyway. It's just mutual deception at this point." Finally, Mike agreed to help me. Having experienced similar pain, he didn't want others to suffer the same fate. "These toxic people who love creating chaos should go extinct," Mike cursed. I arranged for Mike to meet Sarah that Sunday. I made him dress up nicely, suit, slick back hair, and with his height of 6 feet 1 inch, he actually looked quite impressive. Before the meeting, I warned Mike about Sarah's appearance, telling him how unattractive she was. Mike laughed it off, asking how bad could she be. But when Sunday came and he actually met Sarah, Mike bombarded me with messages, saying he'd never seen someone so indescribably unappealing. I couldn't help but laugh. I'd warned him, but he still wasn't prepared for the reality. When Sarah wasn't looking, Mike secretly snapped a photo and sent it to me. Looking at it, I couldn't help but comment, "Wow, she's dressed pretty provocatively." Sarah had said they were going to visit an orphanage, but she showed up in a revealing black lace dress that left little to the imagination, paired with bright red patent leather high heels. As soon as she met my colleague, Sarah latched onto Mike's arm, occasionally pressing against him with her curvy figure. They barely spent 10 minutes in the orphanage before Sarah pulled Mike away, using a coquettish voice to say she was hungry and wanted to find somewhere to eat. Mike was sweating profusely, and to keep some distance from her, he quickly agreed. At the restaurant, things got worse. Sarah sat right next to Mike, constantly serving him tea and food, while her foot kept brushing against his leg under the table. Mike sat through the meal stiff as a board, sweating nervously, but Sarah seemed oblivious to his discomfort. Then she ordered an iced drink for dessert, blushing as she told Mike, "It feels so hot in here. An iced drink feels nice, and my body can handle cold drinks today, if you know what I mean." The implications weren't lost on Mike, who'd been married before. "Haha, yes, it is warm, but maybe you shouldn't have cold drinks. Not good for your health." Mike awkwardly deflected, deliberately ignoring her suggestive hints. But Sarah wouldn't give up. "My place is quite far from here. It would be such a hassle to go back and forth. Maybe I should just stay somewhere nearby tonight. What do you think?" As she spoke, Sarah leaned in closer to Mike again. Her thick lips were coated with so much lip gloss they looked like they'd been greased, and every time she got close, Mike would flinch, feeling like those blood-red lips might swallow him whole. While Mike kept making non-committal responses, he was frantically messaging me to call him in 10 minutes with an emergency escape plan. After leaving the restaurant, Sarah tried to pull Mike toward a fancy hotel nearby. Right at that moment, his phone rang. Mike answered immediately. "Hello? What? How could that happen? Wait for me. I'll be right there to handle it." Sarah looked disappointed and asked, "What's wrong?" "There's an issue with an international order at the company. System crash. I need to go back and fix it right away." "I'm so sorry, Sarah. Let me get you a ride home. We'll meet again another time." Mike gave her a quick side hug, called her a car, and hurried away without looking back. After escaping Sarah's advances, Mike called me, sounding genuinely traumatized. It was quite amusing to hear such a tall, grown man sounding so distressed. "Jack, you owe me a fancy dinner for this." I had to hug her, and now I want to amputate my own arm, Mike complained. I couldn't stop laughing and quickly agreed. "Of course, brother. After helping me like this, I'll definitely make it up to you." While we were chatting, Emma suddenly appeared behind me, trying to listen in on the conversation. Startled, I quickly ended the call. Emma looked at me suspiciously. "Are you doing something behind my back? You seem jumpy." I showed her my call history to prove my innocence. "I swear I was just talking work with a colleague. You just scared me, sneaking up like that." Emma finally nodded and walked away. I breathed a sigh of relief. If she found out about this plan, I'd be in serious trouble. I figured Sarah would try to arrange another meeting after her failed attempt. She seemed determined to land what she thought was a wealthy man. Sure enough, that evening Sarah sent several pouty emojis, hinting that she hadn't had enough fun. This woman was something else, presenting herself as an independent modern woman while desperately trying to attach herself to any man who seemed wealthy. I apologized and went to her stream again, sending more gifts. As soon as she saw my username, her eyes lit up, and she couldn't stop thanking me. Sarah then asked to meet again, saying it was her birthday in a few days and she only wanted to spend it with me. Her aggressive flirting was almost too much to handle. I had to ask Mike to help me one more time, reminding him jokingly to keep his virtue intact. Mike replied, "Go to hell, Jack. My eyesight might not be perfect, but I'm not blind." On Sarah's birthday, I bought a fake designer necklace online and had Mike give it to her in a fancy gift box. Sarah invited Mike directly to her apartment. Her intentions were obvious. When she opened the door, she was wearing a revealing spaghetti-strap dress with a sheer overlay. Mike's head was already spinning at the sight. Sarah was ecstatic about the gift, practically beside herself with joy. She even tried to kiss Mike, who managed to dodge and give her an awkward peck on the cheek instead. But the birthday celebration had barely begun when Sarah's phone rang. When she saw the number, she seemed to flinch. "My friend has an emergency. I need to take this call," she said, walking to the balcony. Though through the window, Mike could see her gesturing animatedly during the conversation. Curious, Mike moved closer to eavesdrop. Through the glass, he couldn't hear everything clearly, but he caught some key phrases. She was shouting something about a child, saying things like, "You can't even take care of a child properly," Mike later reported to me. The birthday celebration ended abruptly, with Sarah claiming her friend had an accident and she needed to go check on them. She rushed out of her own apartment in a hurry. Now I was confused. A child? What child? Wasn't Sarah always promoting her anti-marriage ideology and modern independent woman persona? Where did this child suddenly come from? A light bulb went off in my head. I had a strong feeling that Sarah was hiding more secrets than what appeared on the surface, and I was certain she wasn't just lying to Emma. In the following days, Sarah's WeChat presence almost vanished. She even stopped streaming. I sent a few caring messages, which she responded to, but with long delays and none of her previous enthusiasm. One Friday after work, I was waiting at a red light, idly tapping my steering wheel and looking around when I spotted a familiar figure. Sarah. But she looked completely different from her flirtatious TikTok persona. She was dressed simply, almost plainly, and was holding hands with a boy about 5 years old, occasionally bending down to talk to him tenderly. The boy had a white bandage on his forehead. Everything suddenly made sense, connecting to what Mike had overheard. Sarah really did have a child. I quickly parked my car, grabbed my spare sunglasses and face mask for disguise, and followed them on foot. "Mommy, when will you come back to see me?" the little boy asked pitifully. Sarah sighed. "Mommy's been busy with work, sweetie. I'll come back when I can, okay? Just be good and listen to your dad and grandma." The boy nodded thoughtfully. Despite his young age, his face showed a maturity beyond his years. After walking a bit further, they reached an apartment complex where a short, stocky man came out to collect the boy. "Take good care of my son. I don't want to see him hurt again," Sarah said coldly, her voice completely different from her affected streaming tone. This was her real voice. The stocky man scoffed, "You're hardly being a mother yourself. Don't try to tell me what to do." With that, he led the boy inside, forcefully turning the child's head away when he tried to look back at his mother. Sarah stood outside the complex, watching until her son disappeared from view before breaking down in quiet sobs. I recorded everything on my phone from a distance, then slipped away before she noticed me. So much for her anti-marriage ideology. She wasn't just married before. She was a divorced mother with a 5 or 6-year-old son. All her toxic positivity posts on TikTok were just a facade, meant to project some kind of superiority. But behind the scenes, her own life was a mess. They say misery loves company. Someone who's been hurt wants others to experience the same pain. What a twisted mentality. The more I thought about Sarah's actions, the angrier I became. She couldn't find happiness, so she tried to prevent others from being happy too. Well, if she wanted to play games, I'd show her what it felt like to be exposed. I shared this discovery with Mike, and we planned our next move together. Mike was more than willing to help. His heart was still bitter from how his own marriage had ended because of similar toxic influence. Before we could implement our plan, Emma suddenly told me that Sarah had asked to borrow $300. "Should I lend it to her, Jack? We've only been in touch recently." Emma was conflicted. I immediately vetoed the idea. Curious, I checked my fake account. Sure enough, there was a message from Sarah asking for money there too. "Hey handsome, I'm in a bit of trouble and need some money. I could make it worth your while. Complete with a pouty emoji. Make it worth my while. I wouldn't take her if she paid me." "How much do you need?" I asked casually. She immediately replied, $3,000. I was shocked by her nerve. She asked Emma for $300 but wanted $3,000 from who she thought was a wealthy man. She was clearly targeting different amounts based on who she was asking. I saved these screenshots as evidence. This money would be like throwing it into a black hole. It would never come back. I made up an excuse about company expenses and said I'd help her in a few days. As soon as I said this, Sarah's attitude did a complete 180. She just sent a smiley face emoji and stopped responding. Ha! Known each other for just days and already trying to scam money from me? Not happening. Over the next few days, I kept busy. I followed Sarah in my car several times until one day, she again dressed in her simple clothes, clearly going to visit her son. Sure enough, she left the apartment complex with her child and headed to an amusement park. I quickly called Mike. "Brother, the fish is about to bite. Get over here." I sent him the location and watched as Sarah took her son to a nearby bubble tea shop when he got tired. The scene looked heartwarming, but it was built on layers of lies. After some thought, I called Emma too, telling her I'd take her shopping for that designer bag she'd been eyeing. Women and their bags. Instant happiness. She excitedly came downstairs wearing a hat and sunglasses, not knowing I was actually taking her to witness Sarah's lies unraveling. Mike texted me that he'd arrived. I signaled him to wait 5 minutes before going in for the coincidental encounter. Near the mall, I parked the car. Emma asked, confused, "Why are we stopping here?" "You always spend ages shopping, so I thought we'd grab some drinks first to prepare for our shopping marathon. Let me treat you right," I sweet-talked her, leading her toward the bubble tea shop. Mike walked in first, scanning the counter area. I gave him a subtle nod, and he immediately understood. I led Emma to some seats, and we ordered our drinks. Meanwhile, Sarah was still occupied with her child, until Mike appeared in front of her table. When she looked up, her relaxed expression turned to shock. "You? How are you?" Sarah stammered. Mike stared at her son and demanded, "Who is this?" Sarah fumbled with her words, looking at her child nervously. This is my friend's child. I'm just taking him out for a bit." Before she could finish, the innocent child looked up at the adults with bright eyes and said, "Mommy, who is this uncle?" That single word, "mommy," shattered Sarah's facade completely. She tried to cover the child's mouth, but Mike had already pulled her up from her seat. As the commotion grew, Emma's attention was drawn to the scene. At first, she thought it was just a regular couple's quarrel. But after a closer look, she stood up in surprise and walked over to them. "Sarah, what a coincidence!" Emma greeted her enthusiastically, unaware of how dark Sarah's expression had become. Emma quickly noticed the child and looked back and forth between him and Sarah, seemingly putting the pieces together. I hurried over to join them. "What's going on, Emma?" I asked with concern, then turned to Sarah. "Isn't this your friend? And who's this child?" Mike scoffed and jumped in. "This is her child. None of you knew, did you?" Well, Sarah, you've been quite the deceiver, spreading lies everywhere." Sarah's face alternated between pale and flushed as she tried to break free from Mike's grip, but the difference in strength was too great. As more people gathered around, wondering what was happening, Mike raised his voice. "Look at this woman, going around deceiving people. She's been married, has a child, yet claims to be anti-marriage and an independent woman. She makes plenty of money but still tries to borrow money from me. What a fraud." His voice was just loud enough for the nearby crowd to hear everything. Having achieved the desired effect, I quickly pulled Emma away with our drinks. Emma was still in shock. "She asked me for money yesterday too. Don't tell me she was casting a wide net?" My naive girlfriend was finally starting to understand. I explained. "Of course she was. Can't you see all her personas were fake? Remember how she tried to cause trouble between us? Now you know her true colors." Sitting in the car, Emma kept shaking her head in disbelief. "There are all kinds of people in this world. Don't be so quick to believe what others say. You never know how many masks they're wearing or what their real intentions are." That night, I checked Sarah's TikTok and found she had deleted all her previous posts. She'd even blocked my fake Wealthy Bachelor account. I smirked and deleted that account too. Emma finally opened up to me about how Sarah had repeatedly tried to convince her to break up with me, telling her I was untrustworthy and unreliable. She admitted she had almost believed it. I hugged her lovingly and said, "You know what they say, you can know someone's face, but not their heart. Sometimes what you see on the surface isn't the real picture. You're young and trusting, but women like Sarah, pushing 40, have walked many more treacherous paths than you." Emma nodded, feeling guilty about doubting me. "I just don't understand why she had to maintain this fake single, independent woman persona when she's actually divorced with a child," Emma wondered. "It's simple. She wanted a glamorous image, a superior appearance. She didn't want people looking down on her. But instead of working on herself honestly, she chose to use underhanded tactics. The truth is, she's broke and desperately borrowing money from everyone. Being a modern, independent woman is fine, but there's no need to create false personas that don't match reality. And taking out your own pain on others' happiness is even worse. It reminds me of a saying, if you don't want others to know, then don't do it in the first place. If she hadn't repeatedly tried to destroy my relationship, I wouldn't have had to expose her like this. Sarah wanted to be an independent and successful woman, but she clearly took the wrong path, relying on scams and deception instead of hard work. In the end, it only backfired on her.